Hello, Year 11. This is a sheet to help you with your homework upon planning these 3 questions for your Shakespeare extract for your English Literature GCSE. Ultimately, I want you to be able to plan responses to every single question that we can provide you, both in class and from the study guides. And you should be getting yourselves to a point where you can verbally describe a plan in quite a quick format, say 2 to 4 minutes for each question. And then you should be able to do this with every single question on a reasonably regular basis. I need you to produce evidence of these plans, and I'll give you an example of the first plan here. So you need to do the other 2, and you need to do the other one that we started in lesson today, of Romeo, Fate and Destiny, and that's going to be in your booklets and the OneNote. If you want to, if you click onto this web link, you hold Control and you press the left button, you can get to the OneNote with some more information about this. So we're going to get you to look at the first question now, and we're going to show you how to write this plan. So one strategy for producing your plan is to think about the main theme, the bullet point first, second bullet point. So this one is, how does Shakespeare present the grudge in the play as a whole? And you should be thinking now about what we've discussed about the nature of the grudge, how it's presented, and some of the ideas. And I think you should start off with some of the ideas of the grudge already, and then begin to think of quotations from within the play and elsewhere. So here are 5 distinct points. And the truth be told is you only really need 3 or 4, and it's better to do 3 in depth than 4 in cursory detail. So the 5 points we've got here, because the plan can be more than what we actually write, is 1, the grudge stems from 2 influential families and affects wider society. It's more than just 2 people, or even just 2 families. 2, the grudge is shown without any origin, so therefore it seems arbitrary. 3, those involved are stubborn, but perhaps they have more in common than they realize. 4, does age bring wisdom and maturity to rise above the grudge? And then finally 5, perhaps the most important point, are destiny and fate questioned by the way that the grudge is presented? So for this, the kind of quotations or points that you should see is that at the end of the play, the prince describes how all are punished when he references Romeo and Juliet's death. And if you look at this hyperlink I've just inserted, you can see wonderful acting in the Baz Luhrmann version, where that line really indicates the tragic nature of the play. In terms of the prologue itself, civil blood makes civil hands unclean. Civil, of course, means person, people, town, community, civilization. And again, blood, civil blood, can be a metaphor as well. And the uncleanliness is both the physical uncleanliness of blood and hands, but also the more metaphorical and symbolic uncleanliness of civil violence. On this right-hand column, we've also got some further thought that I'll show you later. Second point here is that there appears to be no origin of the grudge. It seems arbitrary. It's important to notice that the entire prologue was spoken by a chorus, and if you want to choose a quotation to symbolize this, the fact that the prologue mentions the 2 hours traffic of our stage is a direct call from the person who's been the chorus to speak to the entirety of the audience. Just out of interest, the chorus would normally be more than one person in Greek tragedy, but in Shakespearean tragedy, this is presented as one person, at least in the play versions that I have seen. This would link to wider in the play when Lord Capulet is questioned by Tybalt as to why Lord Capulet is not challenging Romeo, and Capulet responds to Tybalt with aggression. He slaps down, he dismisses Tybalt, and he questions Tybalt, saying that he will not make a mutiny amongst my guests. And again, I think this shows how arbitrary that the grudge is, that it can be dismissed seemingly at will for personal gain by Capulet. Third point, the people involved are stubborn, but perhaps they're more in common than they realize. Of course, in the prologue, the key thing for this is that they are both alike in dignity. You can then look at the idea of the word dignity. Also, the rhythm of from forth the fatal loins of these two foes, the strong rhythmic beat of the iambic pentameter there, demonstrating perhaps the commonality and the join together of these two families more than they realize is important. And again, at the end, a gold statue is built to honor both lovers, but there is still an element of competition between the two families. Finally, or rather penultimately, the question that the grudge raises is, does age and experience bring wisdom and maturity to rise above the grudge? Well, there's a balance, there's a parallelism between the ancientness of the grudge and the newness of the fight. And I think, again, the point where Mercutio dies and he damns both families with wonderful phrase, a plague on both your houses. And again, the way that's repeated in versions and the way that it could be acted is again a very interesting thing to mention. Then finally, I think the most important point, save the rest till last, destiny and fate are both questioned in the prologue somewhat, or at least raised. And again, we could see the idea of star-crossed lovers. Look at Cassie's point about the idea of being star-crossed rather than joining or being parallel. Again, from forth the fatal lines of these two foes, that could be referenced here. In terms of the wider in the play, Romeo declares that his fortune is full upon killing Tybalt, and he cries, "I defy you, stars," when he hears the fake death of Juliet. And again, this word defy is very important because it suggests that Romeo is going against what he knows he should be doing. So this right-hand column is an extra I've put here, where it's just that you should be thinking about, across your essay, where can you analyze language, where can you analyze form, structure, and then context. I think in this part here, this idea of civil blood makes civil hands unclean, it's clear Elizabethan context, wider symbolic tensions of Catholics versus Protestants that would have existed in society at the time. Here, we have the form of the chorus, facts of play. Structure exists for this point, that it's cyclical. The play begins and ends in the same fashion, and all that. We know the ending before it starts. Language is analysed the connotations of words. Plague is wonderful, as is ancient. And then the patterning of language, fortune's full, defy you, stars, star-crossed lovers, having the ability to find patterns of language, of destiny and stars and fortune, is going to really give you good marks for analysis, and it's particularly interesting. You could also at some point to look to analyse the form of acting choices, and again, when Romeo defies the stars, could he mix aggression with despondency? Okay, look at this and you choose. In terms of what I want you to do, this is my actual plan when I did it myself. You just need to write some notes for your plan that you can follow. You do not necessarily need to get to this right-hand column, but it is useful itself. I would look to do it at this stage as you are practicing. And you want to do this for these other two questions and the question we have elsewhere. Let me know if you have any questions, and good luck.